is true and is happening right now. And it can become a large problem. I remember when we were young and we were talking with my cousin about that in 50 years, maybe we will have to immigrate in another planet. So I believe that the mitigations measures that has been taken it's not good enough. We have to. Okay, Cyprus is a very small country. We cannot make the difference on the global stage, but as a member state of the European Union, we can. I am trying to stop and throw away with my work and bring the next generation of young-minded, not only young in age, but young-minded people to rule and achieve something better for our country and for.
Welcome to Efivos podcast, where we explore pressing issues and amplifying the voices of youth. I am your host, Andreas Patsalidis, and this podcast is recorded under the framework of the Efivos project. Efivos in Europe aims to provide the youth with journalist skills to enhance the engagement and active participation of young people in the democratic and civic life of the European Union. Today, we are honored to have again Christos Parmakis, a young person who is actively making a difference in the socio-political environment of Cyprus. Christo, welcome again, and we're so happy to have you. Today's
invitation. It's
Yes.
an honor also for me to speak to the people and to the listeners of your podcast.
Thank you so much for being here with Christos. We had a great discussion on the EU elections in our previous podcast. And today's topic will be about climate change. Now, I know nobody is an expert, but you don't have to be an expert in order to make a difference. And we would like to hear from your perspective on what young people we can do to make a difference. So, with that being said, I think it's important to set the foundation of what the crisis of climate change means to you. So, in very simple terms, could you please elaborate on what climate change means?
Yes, as you said before, we are not an expert. We are not experts in this topic, and I want to make that clear. Like, I'm not speaking from the position of an expert, but from a young person and a citizen of Europe who wants to make a change in the different. So. For me, climate change is a huge problem because, especially for us in Cyprus here, we can go out and see the 40 degrees and the 45 degrees and say that climate change is true and is happening right now. And it can become a large problem. I remember when we were young and we were talking with my cousin about that in 50 years, maybe we will have to immigrate in another planet. So, so that's a huge problem. And we have to protect our planet because if we want, we will have to find new solutions. And I don't want that to happen in that kind of way.
So you spoke about being a big problem. How important is the climate crisis for you individually? Like, do you feel that it's affecting you, or is it something that we put in the back of our minds and we're saying it's down the line and we'll deal with it when it comes to it?
I believe that it affects my life and life of every single individual because even the quality of the air, even the quality of the air is it's low. It's low because of the pollution of the atmosphere and all of that. And here in the area where I'm living, we also may have some problems with that. And I believe that it affects the life of every individual. But being every day facing the problems of every person, which every person are facing, I believe climate change is not, unfortunately, the priority and my and lots of other people, because we have some more daily problems to deal with. But climate change have to become a priority. And when we were talking at the last podcast that every individual can make a difference, here the thing that we can do as individuals, it's not the it's not the same with the engagement and participation. With our engagement and participation, we should demand and make the governments to take, and also by taking the positions of the decision makers, because young people have to take the positions of the decision makers, became these stakeholders, and from that position we have to implement reforms and climate reforms and changes to stop the climate change and protect our planet. And okay, we can do recycling in our house, we can do lots of else, but how can we use the recycling when all these stuff are going to the same trash with the other with the other trash, for example, as it happens as it happened in Cyprus in the past, and nothing changed in the perspective. Yes.
Yeah, and as you said, since it won't go away, this problem is something that we need to address, and it's really important to do that. Again, I'm going to call on you to be the representative of young people. I know that it's a difficult responsibility to have, but from your perspective as a young person, seeing that whatever is done today is going to affect the future that you will have. Do you think that there have been sufficient mitigation measures taken? And to what extent do you think that these mitigation measures can be enhanced? For example, can you think of any potential initiatives that you could do as a young person to make a difference?
So I believe that the mitigations measures that has been taken, it's not good enough. We have to make much more to stop pollution, to stop the, mm, uh, the pollution of atmosphere with CO2 and all of that. And as European Union and as Cyprus, okay, Cyprus is a very small country. We cannot make the difference on the global stage, but as a member state of the European Union, we can. And the European Union can make a large difference. But every individual and a group of individuals can organize initiatives. For example, here in Cyprus, for making recycling actually to be recycling and not just a fiction as it was back then. To promote climate education programs in schools, to make people more aware, to promote the government to make Cypriot cities more green and sustainable. What is
Which is
actually
a really easy thing if you think how small is going to be the level of coordination that is going to take in a larger country will be much more difficult.
To make movements, to make government, for example, take meters to stop forest fires, and that can be happen also here in Cyprus. We are a small country, and yes, and for our seas, and for our beaches, and for our forests,
Yeah.
all of that, we can do that as a society of a small but very beautiful and proud country, and as a member state of the European Union, we can affect the global stage.
Again, I think you touched on something really important with what you said in the previous podcast, which that it starts in an individual level. To that extent, I would like to gain your opinion on the movement called Fridays for Future. Have you participated in any of those initiatives or something similar? And just for context, in case someone is not familiar with Fridays of the Future, it's an international movement of school students who skip Friday classes to participate in demonstrations to demand action from political leaders to prevent climate change and for the fossil fuel industry to transition to renewable energies.
So I did not participate in any kind of that activities because I believe when it started I was at the first class of secondary school. So, but I was aware, and I was watching the TV news, and I was aware of what they demand and what they are doing, and this like engagement and activity of young people, which decided by their own to go to the streets and protest demanding better future and climate reforms and transfer and the transformation to sustainable and renewable energy. To renewable energy. That is very very good, and we have to see this as an idea of collaboration of young people for something better. Of course, uh, the far the far right, left, or something in any project, in
New
any
topic, yeah.
idea, in any topic, it's not good, and we have to gain the positives and to and we have to gain the positives from an
And to
idea.
find the middle ground, yeah.
And I believe that this is good people which try to make something good about the environment and climate change. And students, so imagine Cypriot students, for example, protesting for, and we did that as a
Yeah.
students. We went to protests and not for climate change. Imagine us protesting for climate change. Wouldn't that be a great example of participation and of engagement for something good and very very important?
Yeah.
And it will be better for the politicians to hear us young people in our demands, and especially when we are demanding it with so powerful meters.
Do I think you also touched on something really important. Do you think that the reason that those protests that younger people have made in Cyprus about climate change, do they have been suppressed because of their young age, or do they have been suppressed because there is an underlying political agenda that doesn't want to necessarily make a change towards more sustainable practices? Are they like threatened by interests, or is it just that young people have not been given the right platform to talk about those issues?
There may be an underlying political agenda, and not in Cyprus, but not only in Cyprus, but in general in the world. But also, yes, the young of age of the citizens who are trying to make the difference in this area. I believe it's a large criteria which, unfortunately, are making them not heard, us not heard, us the young people, and that's an issue of mentality, not only of Cypriots but all Europeans and politicians. And
Yeah.
they want young people to participate in the army and be part of the military sector.
Yeah, yeah.
Want young people to pay taxes. They want young people uh, to be like
More
to
engaged.
work, to be participating in economical military life, but they don't want to hear what they demand. They don't want to hear uh, what they want, what they want the politicians to do. They don't
Yeah.
want to implement the changes that we're proposing. That is not good, and that is the kind of agenda, and that is the kind of mentality which I am trying to stop and throw away with my work, and bring the next generation of young-minded, not only young in age, but young-minded people to rule and achieve something better for our country and for European Union, for the world.
Yeah, and I think you're doing a great job. And what you mentioned is it is an unfair bargain that young people get when they do have to take the responsibilities that they have to take, but at the same time they do not get the same opportunity to participate.
All
And
the, and
yes.
you know, all the fights here in this land and in Europe in general has been made by young people. All the consequences,
Mhm,
almost all, has been paid by each young generation.
mhm.
And now not here, this young generation, I think it's not logical at least.
Yeah. I think you also mentioned in the previous podcast that we are borrowing essentially time from the the future to do whatever we have done and for the present. And I think one last question on this topic. To what extent do you think that we as society, now that it has become a more trendy, let's say, topic, climate change, are we, and by we I mean EU, are we doing enough to address it, or do we just do it superficially as a talking point in order to shift the focus away from other problems that have been taking uh, important time?
Of course, no, we are not doing enough. As the European Union, we are not doing enough to fight climate change. And just telling and making statement is not enough to actually make a difference in and stop the climate change, stop the pollution of the environment, and I was viewing some researches on the topic, and the result of them are not good, and we are seeing also the climate behavior by our own. So it is a proof that the European Union has to do more for climate change. We are not doing enough. So yes, the politician has to take the responsibility, has to become serious, not in the perspective of words, suits, and maybe haircut, but serious from the perspective of actions and the perspectives of building a sustainable future.
Yeah, I think you described it perfectly, and you actually made a really good closing statement in terms of leaving a positive flavor with what can be gained. On this time, I would like to thank you so much for joining us also today. It was a pleasure to have you again,
Thank you.
and
It was my pleasure to be and talk to you and our listeners. And yes, I will. Over. I had a phone call again, but I will I will accept it after our call. Yes.
thank you so much to everyone who listened to us today, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yes, I will be happy to join your projects and your initiatives.
Yeah. And everyone, we should say that should go follow Christos on the
Oh,
great work that they do
thank you.
in his social media.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.
Bye bye.